right, good afternoon, Matrix. It's very nice to be with you today. I'm here to teach you two foci today in the Cold War. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the Cold War with you quickly, just for you guys to understand what the Cold War is. And then I'm going to do your focus on Cuba, which is a source-based section. And then I'm going to do an essay section, and that is China. Now, this year, both of these foci are new. So just as excited as you are, we are as well to teach it. So firstly, we just need to go through what is the Cold War. Okay, what is the Cold War? The Cold War is between America and Russia, okay, and it's a fight in ideology. Okay, so what is ideology? Ideology is communism versus capitalism. It's a system of politics, a system of economic control, okay? And obviously America was very scared about the spread of communism in Europe, which had happened after the Second World War, okay? So within that framework, we're looking at what happens when a small country like Cuba is also in America's sphere of interest and will also fall to communism. This is the only period in Cold War where we are on a period of brinkmanship, which means that we're on a period of almost nuclear war. Please remember, grade 12s, that both countries have nuclear warheads. America and Russia have nuclear warheads, and therefore they can't take each other on in a physical fight, a hot war. And that is why it's called cold. Okay, please, grade 12s, do not make the mistake of saying that the Cold War is cold because it was fought in cold conditions, like one of my matrics a couple of years ago. The Cold War is cold because it's a fight between ideology, trying to stop the ideology from spreading. Okay, so it's literally a fight between communism and capitalism. Okay, so our first focus is Cuba, okay, and that is a source-based section. If we go to this slide, you'll see that the main issue, and I see I've got a type over there, I've got the off the coast twice, but anyway, you'll see the main issue is that Cuba is 150 kilometers off the coast of America. So they are in their sphere of interest. In other words, it would be very problematic if Cuba becomes communistic, because it's literally right on America's border. And remember, they would be very, very scared that communism would spread up into America. And at the same time, what would happen if nuclear warheads get placed in Cuba? What happens if nuclear warheads are placed in Cuba? Cuba can obviously shoot long-range and short-range missiles into America from their island. Okay, so that is the cause for concern in this focus. So that is what we are going to be looking at. Okay, so just a little bit of background on Cuba. I've said this, if Cuba becomes communistic, it can spread into America. Okay, you can see my arrows over there going from the capital, Havana. We can see it's going right into America's capital, Chicago, Washington, New York, Denver, etc. So in other words, America can be taken out by nuclear warheads if Cuba has them. Okay, that is very problematic to America. Right, so we start this section of work in 1959. Basically, a new leader comes to power called Fidel Castro. I'm sure your teachers have spoken to you about him. And he immediately nationalizes businesses in Cuba. Now, the word nationalize over there means to take ownership of. So the government takes them, okay? The government takes control of their businesses in Cuba, which were American businesses. So this is very problematic for America, because America immediately assumes that this is a sign of communism, okay? Nationalization is a sign of communism. So America makes a very aggressive move by saying to Cuba that we will not trade with you. Okay, so they say to Cuba, if you're going to take our businesses, we're not going to trade with you. Okay, and that's problematic for Cuba, because Cuba's sole trading partner is America. So that is the way in which America was trying to get back at Cuba and trying to make them comply, giving back their businesses. But obviously at this point, guys, we know we're in the middle of the Cold War. So who's going to come riding into Cuba's aid? Who's going to come on their white horse and come and save Cuba? And that's obviously that man over there. You can see they look like besties. They're hugging each other. That is Fidel Castro and Nikita Khrushchev. Remember, Nikita Khrushchev took over from Stalin when Stalin died in 1953. So he's now the new leader of Russia, okay? And that's very problematic to America because they seem to be very, very good friends, okay? America's main concern at this point is what happens if Castro gives, or what happens if Khrushchev gives Castro nuclear warheads, okay? So America makes the second very aggressive attack and tries to invade Cuba in what was known as the Bay of Pigs. Okay, Bay of Pigs is just an area off the coast of Cuba. Kennedy sends in 1,500 men to try and invade Cuba, okay, which was a very bad move because it was a failure. But it proves to Castro that America is obviously aggressive. Okay, and you can see over there, I've got a picture of Kennedy with a Cuban cigar blowing up in his face because obviously the Bay of Pigs was a failure. Okay. Right, so America immediately assumes now what's going to happen if Castro gets nuclear warheads. Okay? And obviously Castro is going to go to Russia and say, guys, you need to help me out. America has tried to invade the first time. We need weapons to protect ourselves. So, lo and behold, America sends a U-2 spy plane over Cuba and takes those photographs that seem very murky to us at the top there, but it's basically there are now nuclear bases in Cuba. Okay? Now, Kennedy sits very much between in a catch-22. Okay? He basically sits, if you can just concentrate on this piece of paper, he basically sits with the doves, okay, and the hawks. And I'm sure your teachers have spoken to you about this, but I'm going to go through it with you anyway. The doves and the hawks, okay? So he puts together a military group, okay, to help him decide what are they going to do about these nuclear warheads in Cuba. What are they going to do about it, okay? So you've got the hawks, who were the military strategists, okay? So these are all your army generals. These are your army generals, these are like your army officers, etc., etc. And then you've got the doves, you've got the civilians, okay? So in other words, what must be done, looking from these points of view? Now, obviously, the hawks are going to say, from a military point of view, you must bomb Cuba, okay? Bomb them out so that they can't attack you again, okay? So the hawks say, bomb Cuba. Okay, and the civilians, obviously, they're the ones that have children and families in America, so they don't want this because they're scared, obviously, that Russia is going to retaliate. What happens if America bombs Cuba and then Russia bombs America? So the doves, our civilians, say, put a blockade around. Okay, put a blockade around Cuba. Now, guys, you must remember that Kennedy has got major egg on his face at this point in time because what happened just before this? The Bay of Pigs was a failure, okay? So in other words, he's got egg on his face. He needs to show that he is firm on communism. He needs to show that, okay? Because his first attempt at trying to get communism out of Cuba was a failure. But at the same time, he needs to think of what happens if he bombs Cuba and Russia retaliates. Because remember, both America and Russia have nuclear warheads, okay? Now, guys, what is this known as? This is known as mutually assured destruction or MAD, okay, when you can take each other out with nuclear warheads. So at this point in time, Kennedy decides he's going to go with the doves. Okay, let's just recap quickly. What are the doves and the hawks? The hawks were the military strategists. They said, at this point, we need to bomb Cuba. Okay, we need to get rid of those nuclear sites. And the doves say, no, put a blockade around. Okay, so what is a blockade? What does the blockade entail? The blockade basically, if you see this is Cuba, okay, the blockade is our ships around Cuba, like this. You place ships around Cuba, okay? Why? I was drawing this on my board now. I'd give Mama Chicks a little bit of time to answer me. But why do you place ships around Cuba like this? Okay? Because no trade can come in or out then. So in other words, you are starving Cuba. You're not allowing them to trade at all, okay? And you are not allowing Russia to bring any more weapons into the country. But guys, this is where we start looking at the period of brinkmanship, because we are on the brink of war, okay? What happens if if Russia retaliates? Think about it.